So, basically, session plan is clearly written trainer's aid for conducting a competency-based training. So, there are 9 elements in the session plan, namely the sector, qualification title, unit of competency, module title, learning outcomes, introduction, learning activities, trainees evaluation or also known as assessment plan, and lastly, the teacher's self-reflection on the session. Then I use TR or training regulation as guide to create my session plan. It is more advisable to use the TR as guide than CBC because this TR or training regulation is the principal source in the preparation of CBC or competency-based curriculum. The content in CBC are obtained from the training regulations. So, as a start here in the standard template for session plan, first is the sectorial qualification is presented in its cover page. As for me, Food Processing NC2 is my qualification title and it is under the sector of processed food and beverages. Then just write it. And my unit of competency is basic competencies receive and respond to workplace communication. In terms of module title, it is actually the unit of competency that is. However, is expressed in or the verb is expressed in present participle forms. So instead of receive and respond to workplace communication, we should have to change the word receive with the present participle form of the verb, and that will become receiving and response to workplace communication. Then, the learning outcomes are the learning blocks of the module. So, they are terms as elements in the TR. So, browsing the competencies or browsing the food processing NC1 unit of competency receive and respond to workplace communication, you will see there are 2 elements. So, that would be my learning outcomes. For an introduction part, actually, it intends to motivate the student to learn. Thus, it provides an overall view of what the training aims to accomplish. The introduction part, you can refer to the unit descriptor in the TR for the content of the introduction. You have to copy the unit descriptor and that will serve as your introduction. And now, the learning activities. So, the learning activity part comprises the column for the learning content, methods, presentation, practice, feedback resources, and time. And right before accomplishing the column, you should or need to indicate the first learning outcomes you will be working. So, you just have to copy the learning outcomes and paste it to the LO. And to decide on what learning content you must indicate on the session plan to guarantee the acquisition of competency in presenting a range of follow, receive, and respond to workplace communication, you must refer in the performance criteria of the TR. Then, the methods. So, considering the learner's characteristic of varied learning styles methods or training delivery must be done in variety of approaches. So, to cater the needs of visual learning on modular or individualized is a good choice. And for auditory learning, lecture with PowerPoint presentation will be of help. As for the presentations, as a means for presenting those methods, the visual learners must be reading the information sheet. Reading the information sheet 1.1-1. So 1 is represents or tell the basic competency number core rather. So 1 is represents or tells the basic competency number. And for lecture with PowerPoint presentation, so this is for the auditory learning, and the auditory learner must be viewing the PowerPoint presentation or while listening on the lecture about the required information is gathered by listening attentively. Then, the column for the practice indicates the means on how the learner will be able to apply and access the knowledge, skills, and attitude she or he acquired. So, the learner will be answered the assessment 1.1-1. And even the used and is a lecture with PowerPoint presentation, you can also require the learner to answer the assessment 1.1-1 as means of validating or accessing what she or he learned from the lecture with PowerPoint presentation. If you added a demonstration from the methods you use, oral questioning, interviewing, and role of playing as for practice. Then the feedback. Every trainee or learner must be given immediately feedback on the result of the practice of application if she or he receiving modular instructions. The different answer sheet so she or he can immediately access her or his own learning and get a feedback on her own performance. She or he can do that by comparing his or her answer to the answer key 1.1-1, same as for lecture with presentation. Now for the resources of the resources column, you just need to indicate the learning materials that will help you to facilitate the training or learners. So, for modular instructions, module information, laptop or computer, if needed. And for lecture with PowerPoint presentation, so it did PowerPoint slide about requires information is gathered by listening attentively. And lastly, time. As for the time, you can refer from the CBC nominal duration right away, right after the modular descriptor. So, if we have 8 hours divided of how many learning outcomes that we have, which is 2, so 8 divide 2, so we have 4 hours every LO. And it's up to you on how many times you will put in every learning content as long as you reach the 4 hours every LO. As for assessment plan, that indicates the methods of evaluating the achievement of learning outcomes. As for assessment plan, that indicates the method of evaluating the achievements of learning outcomes. So you may refer in the TR on the part of evidence plan for ideas on what assessment method is applicable for this unit of competency. And lastly, teacher's self-reflection of the session. Actually, this part must be accomplished when the training is already completed because this portion indicates the observation of the teacher on the sufficient of the learning content and learning resources. It also means to see the appropriateness of the methodology used and some of the other factors that affects the teacher or the training. This is essential for review and improvement of the session plan. So that's all for my session plan. And again, my name is Micah Bijolwani and thank you for listening about my session plan.